Hey everybody, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and I'm finally able to talk about a brand new headset from ASUS. This is the Kithara. The Kithara is the result of a collaboration between ASUS and HIFIMAN. This has a launch price of $360. It's an open back, wired gaming headset using 100mm planar magnetic drivers. Now before I get any further, this was sent to me by ASUS, not HIFIMAN. Doesn't really affect me or what I say about it, but I want to disclose where this came from. I was not paid to make this video, and they have not seen the video prior to me releasing it to you all. So it never affects what I say, and I won't be using any affiliate links in the description below, at least at launch. If Amazon or other e-tailers have their own generic affiliate links that I can benefit from, because I use that money to purchase more equipment for the studio or products that aren't sent to me for review. But for now, the launch video will only have links to help you buy it. I don't get any kickbacks because I don't want you to think I'm financially incentivized to do this. I just wanted to drop a quick too long didn't watch chapter to save you some time to help, I guess, identify if this is the right headset for you or if you should keep watching this video. So this is a wired headset only. There's no Xbox support. You can, at least if you want a microphone, you can use the headphone cable and plug it into a controller, but no one will hear you, and frankly, it won't sound that good on the controller. It does have a USB DAC included, which does work on PlayStation. It works on Nintendo Switch, PC, Mac, and other handheld devices. So there's pretty good compatibility support. Given the fact that it's an open back, you're not going to have any sound isolation or gobs of bass. I'll get into that later, but the general sound profile is clean, linear bass down to 20 Hertz, and a fairly awesome sound tuning on the mid-range and treble. A little bit of a peak at 8,000 Hertz. But aside from that, I think a lot of people are going to enjoy the way this sounds and how it performs out of the box. The chassis and comfort are great as well. It's a relatively light headphone slash headset considering it has a big planar magnetic driver, and I think the chassis design as far as light clamp force goes and breathable pads are all welcome additions for this price. So overall, it's actually quite a competitive product under $400, even though it's on the high-end side for gaming headsets. Now we're going to get into the everything else part, where you can learn what makes this thing so special. And let's start with what's included in the box, because surprise, there are two sets of pads. Now I switched them. The default pad that's included are these hybrid pads, and it does change the sound tuning a little bit, so I'll show you the frequency response graphs later. I switched it to the velour pads because I just love velour. I do my own velour pads on a lot of products. I just love the way they feel for breathability. And they have some pretty specific impacts on the way it sounds, so we'll get into that. You also get a cable in the box that does not support a microphone. It's a standard cable that has dual 3.5, because just like other HIFIMAN products, it's a TS terminated 3.5mm cable. So you can use your own aftermarket cables if you already have HIFIMAN headphones or other products like a Meze Audio that uses a 3.5. You can use that same cable if you don't want to use this one. I actually want to bring that up because even though this looks like an IEM cable, there's a strong kink effect to it. It has quite a bit of a memory effect. It's actually a little bit more rigid than I expected. So not a huge fan of this cable. There's no microphonics issues. It feels durable, and I like the length and everything. I just wish it had a little bit more flexibility to it. Now, as far as the termination goes, you can see a nice big 1/4-inch adapter on it. Not everyone's going to have a 1/4-inch, or maybe you want to use this in different applications. They have an aluminum sleeve that you can just untwist and pull this off. And then they include, this is what I liked about this right off the bat, instead of having a 3.5 that you then install the 1/4-inch or 6.3mm adapter, you can just switch it. And then all you do, there's a little bit of a notch right here, so it kind of ensures that you put it in correctly. Tighten it back up, and now I have a 3.5mm connection. It also comes with a 4.4 Pentacon connection, so you can have a balanced option. So if you have a more powerful amp and you're buying this product, but you want to use it as a high-end, high-powered headphone from time to time, you can use the 4.4 connection. There's no XLR in the box, but most amps that use XLR outputs typically offer at least a 4.4 as well. If not, there are adapters you can buy online, of course, and that leads me to this cable. And this is unique because, one, this design is different than other HIFIMAN products. It has kind of a square to help guide the microphone on the left side so it doesn't spin. It's a totally different cable. I actually like this cable a little bit more than the headphone only cable just because it doesn't have that same memory effect. It's generally just a little bit easier to live with. It seems to just be more compliant with where I want it to go. But again, no microphonics issues. It doesn't necessarily feel any more or less durable. I just like the behavior of it. There is a killer feature with how this cable is designed though, and I want to call out a couple specific things. You'll notice there's two connections going into the DAC that's included. I'll talk about the DAC in a moment. That is because the microphone signal is completely separated from the headphone signal. This is a grossly misunderstood design thing, or I guess feature of gaming headsets. A lot of people associate crosstalk with bad cable or microphone issues, or you're playing the headset too loud, for example. There's two different types of crosstalk. And what I mean by crosstalk is when you have the game turned up, your friends can often hear the game on your microphone signal going back to them, so the chat side. Now there's two ways that can happen. One, it can be acoustic crosstalk. This is a big old open back planar headphone, and there's a microphone in front of it. So naturally, if you crank this thing and you're putting out a lot of SPL, it can get picked up by the microphone, and your friends are going to hear that. Now, there's another type of crosstalk. This is much more common because not everyone games with an open back, but a lot of gamers unfortunately max their volume or play at very loud volumes. And if you're using a cable that is a 3.5 TRRS, which is a single headphone cable that has the microphone and the headphone audio into one, when you have that, there's like 4 pins or 4 stripes. Let's just say 4 connection points. And the ground is shared with all of them. So you have a ground, you have a signal for the mic, and a positive for the left and right channel. So what happens is anytime you turn it up, because there's a shared ground, some of that electrical signal bleeds through the microphone chain, and again, your friends hear it, even though there's no sound leaking out of your cups. There are, chat programs out there like Discord's CRISPR technology can help reduce some of that crosstalk, but a lot of times when your friends are hearing your own game, it's because you're playing on a wired headset, or at least that's an option, far too loud. So ASUS just did not want to put a cable in the box that was going to introduce electrical crosstalk, and that's why they didn't do a TRRS adapter. You can purchase one online. They're sold on Amazon for only a few dollars, so technically you can make this headset work on Xbox. Just keep in mind, the second you combine these two cables into one, it can introduce crosstalk problems, and it's not an issue with the headset, it's just how that connection works. Another cool thing that they did with this is the inline volume control. And I'll be blunt, this is not super premium feeling. It seems fine. I don't feel like it's going to fall apart. It's comparable to something like the Biodynamic MMX 300 series gaming headsets. It's nothing crazy, but the wheel is very small and it moves very quickly. When you get right before max volume, I asked ASUS this to confirm because when a product is sent to me in advance, I really try to understand everything. Right before you hit full volume, there's a little bit of a channel imbalance and a cut, and then it's crystal clear and it's much louder. That's because the way this thing works is when you're attenuating volume, it's going through a different electrical change on the signal. And in theory, that can reduce audio performance. So given that this is a hi-fi, premium product, when you go to full volume, it bypasses the attenuation circuit. So you get a clean signal path from the source of the DAC to your headphone audio. So that's why there's a little bit of a channel imbalance. Some people might buy this and they'll be right on that line and they're like, something's wrong with my volume wheel. I hope that everyone that is considering this headphone takes that information and don't forget it, because I don't want you to think you have a bad cable. So the rest of it goes, as far as the rest of it goes, when you plug this in, it's actually, you can still accidentally plug this in on the wrong side. So just because it fits doesn't mean it's the correct side. There is a little L on the outside terminal, and then we are going to put the other one in. Now, this uses a MEMS microphone. It's very sensitive. We're going to do a mic test in a moment, but while I'm on the note of the chassis, I just want to show you what that looks like. It's a full range microphone. They say it's rated for 20 to 20,000 hertz. And when we do the mic test, you'll hear what I mean. I just want to focus on the chassis real quick just while we're on it, because there's some unique things here. This design is not used on other HIFIMAN products. This is kind of like a custom version of the headband design from ASUS. You can hear the clicks. You have a suspension strap that has a little bit of a sport fabric padding to it. So it's actually really comfortable to wear. This headset weighs 420 grams, which is on the heavier side. It's noticeably lighter than the Odyssey Maxwell, even though these drivers are still massive. It's just because it's a different design overall, and it's not a closed back, doesn't have a battery and all this other stuff. So they were able to keep the weight reasonable. Now, my unit is a pre-production or pre-mass production version. These clicks moved on their own a little bit. They told me that this was adjusted and fixed in the production spec. There's a little torque screw right here, and I had to tighten those down quite a bit to make sure it wouldn't adjust, because what was happening was when I put it on my head, over time after using this for about a month, it would just start clicking down on its own. If I would play games, every now and then I'd hear a little click and it would kind of drop. It doesn't do that anymore because I tightened it, but man, the clamp force is moderate. Between the Sport Fabric Leatherette Hybrid pads and the velours and this lighter weight, lighter clamp, suspension strap design, it's a very, very comfortable headphone to wear. And as far as articulation goes, look at that, it opens all the way up. Now, which can be nice if you're wearing it around your shoulders. I mentioned these are swappable. I'm not a huge fan of the swapping mechanism. It's pretty rigid, and it has a lot of little clips. Not bad, it's kind of good, I guess, because if one clip ever failed, you would still have enough of a backup to hopefully maintain a seal. But when you put this on, it doesn't always like quickly and perfectly line up. You really have to spend a little bit of time kind of lining it up. So I wanted to do this on the video just so I can, not hide anything. And you should hear a click. There we go. So now I'm back in. That went pretty smoothly just because I've done this a few times. It would have been cool, I think, if it had either a magnet system, but maybe that would have increased the weight too much and made it even heavier. But it's secure. I think, honestly, once you find the sound signature and comfort you like, you may not switch it too often, so maybe this is a moot point. But I just wanted to highlight and show you how easy or straightforward the pad swap is once you get used to it. So now I'm talking to you on the ASUS Kithara microphone. It's plugged directly into my Mac. I'm not using any special software. It's just using the included ASUS DAC, which has the microphone preamp built into it, so I'm not bypassing that. And my gain on the microphone sensitivity is set to 50%. A few things I noticed. It's a very sensitive, so it's very easy to overload the capsule. So you don't need to boost the gain to make it loud enough. Again, I'm only at 50% and it's quite loud. It's also a little bit susceptible to plosives, and because this microphone boom is kind of long, you really have to pull it back a little bit further to the side than I think you normally would wear it. I think they could have made the boom just a little bit shorter just because it's so sensitive, and I don't want to deal with the plosives effect. So as long as you pull it to the side or even further away from your mouth like that, it's very easy to be kind of out of sight, out of mind, and people are going to hear you just fine, even at 50% volume, which is pretty impressive. So I just want to warn you on the sensitivity, depending on what you're connecting this to. If you're bypassing the DAC or you're running it at max volume, you could be quite loud to other people that you're talking to. So just take that into consideration and maybe test your sensitivity in case. So I'm getting ahead of myself just a little bit, but I wanted to talk to you on the boom mic from Meze Audio, which has a really good sound to it, and it's universal and to an extent. It's dual 3.5 millimeters, sold separately, and it works on products like this 105 AER and other HIFIMAN headphones that will use dual 3.5 millimeters. So I just wanted to give you a quick comparison. The only thing I want to call out is the Meze boom mic uses a shared ground. It's a TRRS connection. It's not balanced. So if you are playing at high volumes on some equipment, you will have that crosstalk issue where your friends could hear the game audio that you hear on your end. Just for a quick comparison, this is the Drop PC38X microphone. The Drop PC38X is a collab headset from Drop and Sennheiser. Sennheiser is known for making pretty insane mics on the pro space. So again, shared ground just like the Meze boom mic. So you could have the crosstalk issues, but for under $200, this microphone sounds pretty good. And now I'm talking to you on the Beyerdynamic MMX330 Pro, which is an open back wired gaming headset for $380. It's actually a little bit more than the Kithara, uses dynamic drivers. This microphone sounds pretty good. I think a lot of people know this microphone sounds good, but when you hear it compared to some others, it's quite shocking how good it really performs. And unique to this and the Kithara, this does have a balanced cable for the microphone. It's not shared unless you use the included dual 3.5 to TRRS adapter. So if you happen to have a DAC that has the separate plugs, then you can benefit from that with the 330 Pro. The 330 Pro does not come with that DAC though, so you will have to do that separately later or plug it into the back of your motherboard. Now before I get into sound quality, I just want to cover the impedance of this, the electrical impedance. And ASUS rates this at 16 ohms. I used a DATS V3 to measure it, and I basically got the exact same results. I got like 16.5 ohms across the board, and it was perfectly flat. I had no weird jumps or modal issues or anything like that. And what that basically means is whether you have a low impedance amp, like sub 1 ohm output impedance amplifier, or something with 30 ohms of output impedance, it's not going to change the frequency response of this headset. You might introduce other issues if you have like weird distortion problems and stuff like that. But as far as like making the bass sound warmer or the treble brighter or darker, it's not going to come from impedance itself because of how flat this is. So I always want to show you that just so you know how it behaves with different amps. Getting into objective sound quality, this is getting really close to when I get my new measurement rig. I do have a B&K or Brüel & Kjær 5128 on order thanks to a collab with Wicked Cushions. So thanks to them for supporting that measurement endeavor. So I'm going to be remeasuring everything. This is measured on a KB006X Pinaclone. It's a Gross Pinaclone, and I use an IC711 coupler clone until the new gear shows up in roughly a week or two. I'm getting super close. Having said all that, when we look at the frequency response of the Kithara, it's quite good. You get flat bass extension all the way down to 20 hertz, typical big old HIFIMAN planar magnetic driver performance. They're known for having strong sub bass, even though they're still an open back headphone or headset in this case. So it's good to see that carry over. Now the mid-range is amazing. This is actually super surprising and impressive. I think whatever ASUS and HIFIMAN did with this driver, this is a huge feat. And I want to show you something because the new Edition XV is $400. It's an amazing headphone. I'll talk about the treble differences later, but I want to call out this mid-range that has these little rises and dips. Those are modal behaviors of the diaphragm itself. The ASUS one doesn't have these modal issues. Now on the XV, the modal issues were similar from left to right, but with some products, at least on my unit, with some drivers, particularly big planars, if you have modal issues, they don't always have the exact same modal issue. So what happens is these small rises and dips in frequency response differ from left to right, which can affect imaging performance. It might change the balance tonally just a little bit depending on how extreme these modal changes are. But look how flat the Kithara is in the mid-range. It almost behaves more like a dynamic when it comes to modal behavior. Not all planars behave like the XV. For example, when we look at the Aria Stealth, which I think is the closest sound signature I heard to the Kithara, which is pretty damn complimentary. You got to think the Aria Stealth, when this came out, was $1,600. That is an expensive headphone. And you have very similar performance in the bass and mid-range, and a very similar scoop at 1,500 hertz. This is on the stock pad that it ships with, not the velour. It comes with the hybrid pad pre-installed. So you have a little bit of a scoop at 1.5 kilohertz, and that kind of creates a more vast sound stagey type effect. This is a very common tuning characteristic. A little bit less of a peak at 3,000 hertz on the Kithara. A comparable dip. What's most noticeable about the Kithara is this 8,000 hertz peak is the strongest peak I hear on the headset. Thankfully, that is a super easy peak to fix because if you're using Windows, even if you only have a 10-band EQ or you plug it into anything with a 10-band, just drop 8,000 hertz by 3 or 4 decibels, and the rest of it is damn near perfect. I'm really, really impressed with the out-of-the-box sound signature. The high treble is reduced quite a bit. It doesn't stage as bright as a lot of other HIFIMAN headphones. Like if I look at the Edition XS, for example, which is a dark blue line, let's try to change that. And you'd see a much higher peak, way up here at 12,000 hertz. And the Stealth had the same issue. So I actually don't mind the Kithara's high treble behavior. It's not necessarily going to stage as wide or as airy as some of the older really wide stagey headphones from HIFIMAN that were like 1,000 to 2,000, but the rest of the performance is pretty exceptional at this price, again considering it's fully analog. Now I actually switched to the velour pads originally just for comfort, and I got another bonus out of it. I actually like the velour sound tuning a lot. You get a touch more warmth in the bass. You can see a slight lift right about 80-90 hertz. Very similar mid-range performance again. You don't get that soundstage scoop. There's a little bit more attack at 1,000 to 2,000 hertz, which to me is really pleasant for rock music and some, more of aggressive dynamics when it comes to listening to rock. It just makes guitars a little bit more intense. It pushes vocals a little bit more forward. Similar tuning in, the 2 to 4K. It doesn't really have like a sharp 4K resonance on either one. So overall, I think the tonality is actually quite good. There's a little bit less of a peak as we approach 8,000 hertz, which is probably why I like it so much. I'm typically more sensitive to that area. And my unit, the velour pads just measured to be a little bit brighter than the hybrid pads that came with it. So I like this sound tuning more for what I would be using this for, which is a mix of music and games, because I typically lift 1 to 2,000 hertz a little bit when I'm playing FPS games, which is going to lead me into the subjective side of things. And boy, do I have a lot of good things to say. So first off, when you have an open back planar headphone like this that's tuned well, you hear everything. It is so damn clear. It's not blasting you with bass. So some gamers that are transitioning from, I say transitioning like you're coming off of a bad drug or something. I'm not calling this out in a negative way, so please don't think I'm roasting another headset. Some headsets are intentionally tuned to have much more bass. It's like the gamer profile, right? You get the Razer, the SteelSeries Turtle Beach. Bass is often very much elevated. And then those people buy an audiophile product that's much flatter and more neutral and a lot more boring to a lot of people. Totally fine for you to feel that way, by the way. Don't feel bad for liking bass. This is very clean bass, but it extends down to 20 hertz very cleanly. The bass you do get is very well nuanced and textured, so it's not just like it's less bass. You still hear more of the intricacies of the bass on a headphone like this, and the sub-bass rumble effect that you get is surprisingly good, whereas a lot of gaming headsets, even in the $200 to $300 space, they don't give you the detail in the bass. It's more one-hit wonder type thing, although I think some new headsets have gotten a lot better in that regard. HyperX, Cloud 3S, Fractalscape, etc. for that mid-range. Those are quite good. These are just a little bit more linear sounding. The vocal tuning as a whole sounds very natural to me. So if you are concerned with how these sound for music, I really have no issues with this. I think sometimes I do want a little bit more bass if I'm listening to EDM music or some kind of hip hop, or it's just something that is brighter recorded. I want a little bit more bass to kind of back that up. That might be why I like the velour pads more, because it's not just the slight bump in the, the low mid-range of bass, like the, 80 to 100 hertz. Because the treble is also reduced slightly, it's almost like you're tilting the sound signature down just a little bit. And it makes that 8 kilohertz emphasis a little bit less intense for me. So without doing any EQ, I just find that I can use the velour pads for everything. I think the stock pads have a more natural timbre to them for vocals. So if you are chasing a more neutral vocal presentation where it's not coloring the sound as much, these are great. Vocals step back just slightly, but they sound incredibly clean and easy to hear what they would sound like in real life. There's a tiny bit of bite to vocals, not honkiness or shouty in any way, but it is just a touch more forward on this. So if you're used to something that's more of like a reference understanding of how something should sound, let's say you've heard an artist sing in real life before, and then you go home and listen to that same person, I think the stock pads will stay truer to what you heard in real life. These color it just slightly, but I don't mind it. It's not too egregious. And again, because it's slightly warmer and the treble smoother, overall, I still find it more enjoyable to listen to. The 8 kilohertz peak can stand out for some people. Some people don't hear a strong peak at 8,000 hertz, and this is just going to sound incredible to them. Because I'm more sensitive at this peak, I had to EQ it just a little bit if I'm playing at higher volumes, but with some games, I didn't need to touch it at all. If I plugged and played to play my racing games, sound signature is fantastic. I don't need to do any EQ. And again, the whole comfort thing comes in handy there. Now, because of this emphasis at 1 to 2,000 hertz, that is a key area for tracking footsteps and helping me with first-person shooters. So for how I would typically use or wear a gaming headset, these pads are just insane. And the other thing I want to point out is ASUS actually worked with HIFIMAN for matching the left and right driver. And I took a ton of measurements. There's no real positional variance issues. So if you shift the headset slightly forward, back, up, down, it doesn't seem to change the frequency response at all. This is huge for positional accuracy. Driver matching is huge. So if the game engine is telling you someone is over here, if you have a slight channel imbalance or the headphone or headset is emphasizing the frequency slightly differently in those key areas, you don't get that pinpoint accuracy that products with exceptional image or driver matching have. This isn't an exclusive thing to this headset. I'm calling it out because they put effort into doing this on a gaming product. Most gaming headsets do not have hand-matched drivers. You do get hand-matched ones on products like the VZR Model 1, which really focuses on imaging performance. but typically the driver selection and matching is reserved towards higher end hi-fi products like certain HIFIMANs, like certain Meze products. You can use your imagination. There's a lot of good hi-fi stuff out there. It's a common thing in the high-end space, so I'm pleased to see it even on the much more affordable side with ASUS involvement. So now it's time to address some elephants in the room and make some comparisons, because I built my channel on honesty, and I don't believe in consumerism just to buy the new thing. I'm not going to tell you this is the best thing in the world and you have to buy this. That's a horrible practice, and you'll watch me maybe 2 more times and then stop coming back. So I believe honesty is the best policy. Now, I still have a lot of great things to say about this, but I want to make some comparisons to some other wonderful headsets on the market that you might already have. This is the Beyerdynamic MMX 330 Pro. It's $380. It's actually $20 more than the Kithara, and technically it comes with less stuff. It doesn't come with swappable pads like this one does. That change the sound signature. It still has velour pads out of the box. It's a relatively light headset and relatively comfortable to wear. However, the pads are more shallow, so my ears touch the baffle a little bit. And like other Beyerdynamic headphones, the clamp force is a little bit stronger. You already heard earlier, and if you skipped ahead, go to my microphone chapter. I actually talked on the Beyerdynamic mic for comparison. The microphone performance is exceptional, and I like that they give you a balanced cable for the mic so you don't have any crosstalk issues. It's completely separate if you are able to run 2 separate cables. As far as the sound signature goes, the bass is even leaner on the 330 Pro. The 300 Pro is their closeback version, which has noticeably more bass, but I found that for competitive play, if you're looking for FPS play, the open back version, even though it has significantly less bass, to me just was a better performer on imaging and overall clarity. So the Kithara has a more immersive bass profile while still being relatively lean. It has just a little bit stronger sub bass extension, but it is a little bit brighter in the treble. The 330 Pro does not have the same 8 kHz peak that the Kithara does. So while I do like the overall treble tuning a little bit more on the 330 Pro, just because I don't have to EQ the treble at all, it still sounds relatively bright because the bass is noticeably softer. So it's just a matter of preference. I think the 330 Pro is an excellent headset, but it doesn't seem as resolving as what you get with the Kithara. If you're chasing subtle detail and microdynamics and really trying to pick up the most quiet sound you can, then the Kithara to me has a slight edge there. The other thing I want to say on this is these are open backs, so when I talk about picking up subtle detail, if your room is loud and you have a loud PC fan or HVAC system, you have a much higher noise floor, and you might actually need to consider a closeback option. ASUS makes the Delta and the Pelta if you're willing to go wireless. There's the Maxwell, you have the Sennheiser 620S if you want to go custom. Even Meze Audio has some new good closebacks that I've liked lately. So keep that in mind as far as a noise isolation or noise floor goes. Now the Drop PC38X, this is a legend. This has represented one of the best values in wired headsets for what, almost a decade now. I feel like I don't even remember when this came out. This has been out for a long time. It's so plug and play. I mean, it's a clampy headphone, so it really squeezes your head. It loosens up a little bit over time, but it has good, simple controls. It's really easy to drive. It has a flip to mute mic that sounds fantastic for its price. My only issue was the clamp force. I can't wear this too long because the pressure goes here. And any headphone that does that, I had that issue with some Dan Clark headphones. It just makes it so I can't wear it too long. Which is why I used to gravitate towards the H6 Pro before some other new wired models came out from EPOS. EPOS isn't doing gaming headsets anymore, so I feel bad kind of suggesting that from a brand that's no longer having gaming on their vision, if you will. Still a great headphone, but the Drop PC38X, to me overall, has a nice clean bass. It has noticeably more roll-off. The bass doesn't have the same power handling capability of this, so if you like to EQ up your bass and play at a loud, impactful volume, the Drop PC38X doesn't even come close to the Kithara. This has noticeably more power handling and much lower distortion when pushed at medium to higher volumes. So I'm really impressed. It's kind of crazy because this was always such a good sounding headset. And when you hear this, it's like you've gotten into a high performance car in comparison to something that's, good and reliable. So it's not to knock this in any way. I still think this is a great headset. It's built like a tank, even though it feels relatively cheap being in all plastic. But when you pay for more expensive products, at least you do hear a noticeable difference in overall performance. I still think the tuning of this is slightly better at lower volumes. Like if I were just listening to music, this is really easy to listen to. But again, just don't expect a lot of bass. As far as gaming performance goes, it's still wonderful. It's great for first-person shooters, has a nice, good stage to it, and everything sounds natural and as it should. Takes you EQ pretty well in the mid-range and treble. That's not much of an issue. Just don't get this if you're chasing tons of bass. So going the opposite of that, we have the new Maxwell 2, and obviously the Maxwell 1 can be included because they're very similar. The bass on a closed-back planar magnetic headset that has DSP to boost the bass is insane. Especially with the new firmware update that I talked about recently. And the best game I can come up with as an example of this is Arc Raiders. That is a guilty pleasure game and sound profile for bass. If you want like that thunderous explosion, that game is just so much fun to listen to. And even though having more bass isn't the competitive advantage of going lean and mean just to focus on footsteps, I want to still enjoy being in the game. And when there's lightning and thunder and all of that stuff, this just sounds so damn good. Now you can EQ up the bass quite a bit on this because this has such a large driver. The power handling is immense. It's just out of the box. This is more clinical and detailed and noticeably a little bit brighter because of that peak. Whereas the Maxwell on the newest firmware is a little bit more tame, still hyper resolving, still stages quite wide for a closeback, but the most noticeable difference is the sub-bass impact. Now, this is jamming in a lot of features in wireless form. You have cross-platform support. It works wirelessly with Xbox. To me, it's kind of a totally different product, but at the end of the day, it's still $300 to $400 for a gaming headset. So do you need or want wired versus wireless? There's pros and cons for both. Like, what about battery life? What about firmware breakage? Things like that. And you get something like this that is purely analog. As long as it holds up, you don't really have to replace anything but pads. And they even give you 2 in the box. So it's hard to say one is better than the other. I think the bass of the Maxwell is just so intoxicating, and I love the convenience of wireless. But to kind of jump ahead a little bit, I still think this is one of the best out-of-the-box wired gaming headset builds you can get. They crushed it in terms of total performance for what a flagship wired gaming headset should be. Now, that leads me into the LCD GX from Odyssey. This is $900. It comes with a single-ended or like a TRRS plug microphone system, so it's all combined. And then it has a breakout cable in the box, as well as a separate headphone cable if you don't want to use the mic at all. This uses, it's actually one of Odyssey's lightest flagship headphones on the lighter side. It's lighter than the Maxwell, even though it looks huge, because it uses magnesium alloy and other exotic materials, so it's still under 500 grams. This is pushing like 570. So a little bit heavier than the Kithara, and it's honestly not bad tuning. I think the LCD GX is a wonderful headset. The issue is price versus what you get for a gaming headset. My biggest problem, and I mentioned this in my review, is this wants to always push these cups outward. So when I wear it, it kicks out on my head. It just doesn't work as well with my head shape, and I can push it in. You can actually see it coming back out. So I don't get a seal right here, and this does not have a bass forward profile sound signature as it is. So losing that much sound from leakage on top of it, it just doesn't make it the best sound signature for me. If I had a seal, I think I would like it significantly more because it actually wears quite well, even though it's an all leatherette pad. I still find it fairly comfortable, and I like the scoop in the low treble to make it a little bit less fatiguing to listen to. Kind of similar to an LCDX. For a little bit more, the LCDX is about $1,200. And to me, that headphone, even though it's slightly heavier, just it sits on my head. I mean, that thing is like on there, and I love the way that thing sounds when you EQ it. Significantly more money than this, though, to me. So that opens up a whole can of worms for different products. Now, I don't want to skip over the Edition XV. The XS is just over $200. To me, the XV is just a more mature, much better built version of the XS. It sounds better, it's noticeably more comfortable, and it actually fits my head. This is $400, and then if you buy the Meze boom mic, for about 80 bucks, you have a $500 custom built gaming headset. So some people are thinking that this might not be worth the value. I've seen comments online thinking it's overpriced for a wired headset, but there are people out there that are buying headphones like this, or even $2,000 headphones, and slapping a mic on it. Maybe you got an Antlion mod mic for something that didn't support it. Well, the XV can use the same mic as what the Meze one does. So if you want to customize it, you can. I think the value of the Kithara is better in this case because, particularly for gaming, the treble tuning is a little bit more clinical, and it can make things perceivably more detailed or staged wider because of that emphasis in the treble. It's not drastic, but overall it's a great performer. I have no issues with the XV. I think the XV has a little bit more authority in the mid bass. It's probably because the treble is more relaxed. It makes the bass sound a little bit stronger to me and more impactful. I'd imagine that if I lifted the treble to sound just like the Kithara, I'd have pretty comparable performance. I don't think this necessarily resolves significantly better than the Kithara. There's no real advantage there. It's really just a tuning and chassis design. Wonderful headphone, but doesn't have the quick swap pads like this. So it's really just, if you don't want to do EQ and you're worried about the treble being too bright, I guess, with the Kithara, it's not big, but if you just want something tame, then I would consider the XV and then just do a custom mic if you really need one. Or if you're at your desk, just get a standalone microphone. Now, the last one here is basically an example of what's possible. This is the 105 AER from Meze Audio. Puts it in a similar to slightly higher price bracket than the Edition XV. Wonderfully comfortable. This thing is built like a tank, fully user serviceable. And this is just another way of, like, you know, if you're doing $400 for or $360 for a wired gaming headset and you don't need the DAC and you're okay with the chance of crosstalk, because keep in mind that is an issue for a lot of people. Single cable for the mic and the audio. If you're okay with some of those things, then you really have this whole world of headsets you can customize. So again, because I'm doing this review, I don't want to pretend there's no other solution in this space for that price range that can give you good performance. There are plenty of good options that you can kind of build and do yourself. And this is just really comfortable. To be clear, I still like the audio performance of the Kithara more than even the 105 AER. This has a really nice bass shelf and, you know, as far as warmth goes, if you listen to a lot of guitars, but I actually like the treble tuning more. I have a more natural timbre. This has a little bit more emphasis at like 4,000 Hertz that can make things sound a little bit sharper without necessarily being more resolving. Just adds a little bit of bite in the treble, or almost like a touch of graininess. It's minor. I think what they did with the tuning of the 105 AR is great, and a lot of people like it, and it's just so comfortable and lightweight to wear. So it's just playing around with overall design and price points if you want to put together your own system. This was shown more to just kind of highlight that despite what some people think in terms of value, when you start listening to other wonderful wired products that have a great reputation, rightly so, that still cost more than this, and then you hear how good this performs, the comfort, the features of having a DAC, the swappable pads, I actually think this is a pretty damn good value, because I've heard stuff that's comparable but more money. So take that for what you will. I'm not doing this to get kickbacks, but I think if you have a chance, try to hear one for yourself, see what other reviewers say and experience, because I'm only sharing what my experiences were and what I like. And I hope that by covering all this as much as I could, you can help kind of align yourself with what you're looking for to find what makes you happy. And don't worry about people telling you what's good or bad, or, you know, telling you to spend your money elsewhere. Get what you like at the end of the day. My videos are here to help you find what you like, not to tell you what to like. So with that being said, thank you so much for hanging out and sticking it to the end, making it to the end. Don't stick it to anyone. Thanks so much for making it to the end. This was a long video. I really appreciate the support. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you at the next one. Take care.